Who is Steve Jobs? Steve Jobs was an American inventor and entrepreneur who was the co-founder, chief executive, and chairman of Apple Computers, which became the biggest name in the technology sector. The company's product has dictated the evolution of modern technology. Steve was born in 1995 to two University of Wisconsin graduate students who gave him up for adoption. Since his childhood, Steve was smart but directionless. He had dropped out of college and started off experimenting with different sectors before co-founding Apple with Steve Wozniak in 1976. After that, Jobs left the company in 1985 and launched Pixar Animation Studios. Later on, after a decade, Jobs returned to the company. Steve Jobs, early days. Steve was born on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco, California. He lived in Mountain View, California. This place was later renamed the Silicon Valley. During his childhood, Jobs and his father worked on electronic equipment in the family garage. His father used to demonstrate to him how to take apart and reconstruct electronics. This hobby instilled confidence, tenacity, and mechanical prowess in Jobs. Therefore, the path to excellence started to off from his family's garage. Jobs was always an intelligent and innovative thinker since his childhood. However, his youth was struck in the quicksand of formal schooling education. Due to the boredom, he was a prankster during his days in elementary school, and hence, his fourth-grade teacher needed to bribe him to study. He tested so well that the administrators wanted him to skip ahead to high school. However, his parents declined that offer. Post-high school, Steve enrolled at Reed College in Portland, Oregon. There too, he was frustrated and dropped out of college and spent the next year and a half dropping in on creative classes at the school. He had developed a love of typography during his struggling days. In 1974, Jobs took over the job of a video game designer with Atari. A few months later, he left the company and traveled to India. Steve Jobs, how did he start Apple? During the days when Jobs was enrolled at Homestead High School, he was introduced to Steve Wozniak. Later on, the duo co-founded Apple. During an interview, Wozniak has stated that their partnership was successful because of their love for electronics. They used to work for hours with digital chips, and very few had an idea about chips during that time. Although Wozniak had designed many computers before Jobs did, both of them shared a common interest that fueled their journey to success. The start of their entrepreneurial venture was in 1976 when Jobs and Wozniak started a company named Apple Computer. The first headquarters of the company was at Jobs' family garage. Initially, they funded their entrepreneurial venture by Jobs selling his beloved bus and Wozniak selling his scientific calculator. Later on, the duo is credited with revolutionizing the computer industry with their company by democratizing the technology and making machines smaller, cheaper, and more accessible to everyday customers. Wozniak had conceived of a series of user-friendly personal computers, and with Jobs in charge of the marketing sector of the company, they marketed the computer for $666.66 each. The Apple I earned the venture around $774,000. After 3 years of Apple's second model, the Apple II, the company's sales increased by 700% to $139 million. In 1980, the product became a publicly traded company and comprised a value of $1.2 billion by the end of the first day of trading. Later on, Jobs asked the marketing expert John Sculley of Pepsi-Cola to accept the role of CEO of Apple. However, the next several products of the company experienced negative feedback due to the flaws in the products. Hence, IBM surpassed Apple in sales and Apple had to compete with a PC-dominated world by IBM. The year 1984 experienced the release of Macintosh. It was both romantic and creative. However, despite positive sales and performance superior to IBM's PCs, the product was still not compatible with IBM. Later on, Jobs was pushed into a marginalized position in the company and left the company in 1985. Steve Jobs, founding Next, returning to Apple and Pixar. Post his tenure at Apple, Jobs began a new hardware and software enterprise named Next. The brand floundered in its attempt to sell its operating system to the public and later on, was taken over by Apple in 1996 for $429 million. In 1997, Jobs returned to Apple and came back with a new management team. The team under Steve altered stock options and self-imposed an annual salary of $1 per year. Under Jobs, the company came back on track and his products like iMac gained positive reviews from the customers. In the upcoming years, Apple introduced many more revolutionary products like MacBook Air, iPod, and iPhone. The competitors struggled to produce similar technologies, and this became the reason for the success of Apple and Steve Jobs. Later on, Apple became the face of technology. In 1986, Steve purchased an animation company from George Lucas. This brand was called Pixar Animation Studios. Jobs had invested $50 million of his own money into the company. The studio became popular in the industry by producing many iconic movies like Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles. Pixar's movies earned the company a whopping $4 billion. In 2006, it merged with Disney, and in this case, Jobs was the largest shareholder of the acquisition. In 2024, Steve Jobs' net worth is estimated to be $7 billion, but he could have been significantly wealthier if he had held onto his Apple shares.